welcome to Play the Ink. This is Zach Hale, and today we have another series with some of the performers and some groups coming from Camp 2023 that's upcoming. So today we're here with Daniel Smith, Caroline Owen, Badie, and Ben Howard, and I'm going to let them talk about the project that they're doing. It's a collaboration with piano electronics, which is visuals, and the audio electronics and dance. So let me just start. I'll start with Ben. Maybe if you could just talk about who you are, a little bit about yourself, and maybe about the project, or whoever wants to talk about the project. I guess one of you four, maybe we can figure out who wants to talk about it.
Sure. So I hail from Texas, originally Tallahassee, Florida, but right now I am instructional assistant professor with Texas A&M out in College Station. I primarily focus on immersive performance and dance and theater and production.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we can go next, just how I see it on my screen. We'll go with Caroline.
Sure. I am a pianist, and I graduated, last May from Florida State. So I spent some time in Tallahassee, but I am originally from Atlanta, and I am now based in Atlanta again as a freelance artist and a teacher as well. And I also have a background in dance. So that will kind of come into how all of this got started and parts of the piece, how they work and that sort of thing.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I might talk to you, ask you more about the dance part in a second. So let's go down to Danielle.
Yeah, I am a assistant professor at Florida State University. I'm a musician and composer, but I'm actually housed within our School of Dance. So a lot of what I do is writing music for dance, composing works, specifically for dance and for film and for immersive theater and that sort of stuff. Just to give you a little bit of interesting insight here, I met Caroline in the spring semester of 2022. She was actually teaching a course that I teach that deals with the arts and philosophy and things of that nature. And
it's a great class.
Yeah, well, she was spectacular in there as well. And so we decided to continue our connection and make some art together.
Awesome, thank you. And then Badie?
Hi, I'm a composer and multimedia artist. I'm based in Houston, Texas. I'm finishing my doctorate in composition at Rice University. And I've been working with Caroline for over like 5-6 years now. Now we are expanding our collaboration to new people. Super exciting.
Great. So I guess always the next question I have for people is, how'd you get involved with camp? I don't know if it was through Unmi or Ben or which person it is. So are you all working equally together? Or is there like a ringleader right now, or how is that working?
But Badie, you're the one that originally heard about this festival, right?
Yeah, we just saw it like in social media that there's a call for a score for an installation, and we've been working and like not working, but like brainstorming about like a possible project with all four of us. And we thought, oh, this is a good place to maybe we can try it out. So we wrote our application, and now we're making it.
Oh, great, cool. That's awesome to see that those things, the call for scores, working. I know, like some of the other people, it's always like, yeah, I applied, but I know Unmi, or I went to college with this person, blah blah blah. So that's awesome. So you have never met anybody from USF or have no ties to USF at all. Very cool. I'm excited for that. I'm a USF alumni and I live in Clearwater. So, for me, it's like, yeah, this is down the street for me. So, great. Very cool. Very cool.
Well, maybe we should talk a little bit about how like Badie and I sort of then connected with Daniel and then with Ben, because it was sort of this like web of like, we met and then we were already, working together. And as Badie mentioned, we met, well, we've been working together for like 5 years, and We both met when we were working, or when we were students at University of Georgia in Athens. We just, gosh, Badie, how did we start collaborating?
So I went to one of the concerts that Karen was performing with wind ensemble, and that was my first time that seeing like a young master student pianist playing a very crazy piece like this. So she's a fantastic pianist. So, but that was part of it, and the other part that was very fascinating for me was like when she plays, she moves really freely and not fake. So it's a very intuitive form of movement when she performs piano. Um, so yeah, and after that performance, I started talking to her, and I think she came to one of my concerts uh, that I had a premiere in, and then after that we started talking, and then we started our first multimedia project. So now, Carla, you continue.
Well, and then I guess so Badie and I have done two, I guess, big projects together now. Our latest one we premiered a little over a year ago, or a little under a year ago. And at that point I was in Dan's class. And so Dan and Ben came to that performance at Florida State. And this piece was, again, it's called Electric Sky Blue, and it is a piece for solo piano, dance, and interactive intermedia. That was kind of the official, I guess, terminology that we decided to use. And it involved interactive visuals and interactive audio. So then Dan hosted, I don't know if you want to talk about the AST workshop, because that's kind of how this, I mean, we've started talking about all of the ideas for this.
Sure. So that course that we keep referencing has this really funky name called Artist Seeking Transcendence. It's just a name to try to poke people's brains a little bit. It's really a philosophy and arts course, and how aesthetics are affected by human character and virtues and things like that. And related to this, there's an organization by the same name. And we hosted a creativity retreat in Myrtle Beach this last summer. And Caroline was there, and Badie was there. And Ben couldn't be there in person, but he would Zoom in. And so we had this week basically at the beach to just talk about creativity and different art projects and stuff. And that's when we began, I think, the initial inkling that maybe we could do something together. Maybe we should make this thing happen somehow. We didn't know what we were going to make yet. But we kind of realized that we have like distinct but connected artistic experiences. Like Caroline was mentioning that she's a pianist, but she does have a background in dance as well. And of course, I'm a composer, but I have connections with the dance world. And Ben is a choreographer and dancer. And of course, Badie, with all of his experiences working with Caroline and working with the dance world, both as a composer as well as this intermedia, inter-arts technology guru. So there seemed to be a lot of webbing and interconnectivity. And then we just had to figure out what we wanted to make. So that was kind of the next stage, I guess.
Interesting. So before I talk to Ben, yeah, I do have a couple of questions. First, so Caroline, what's your background in dance? Because you keep saying like I have a background in dance. So what is that background?
I started taking ballet when I was 7 years old, and then as many people do, they kind of start expanding to other styles. So I was taking classes in contemporary and tap and musical theater, and I was in the dance studio more than I was practicing piano. I actually liked dance more than piano for most of growing up. It really wasn't until the end of high school and applying for colleges when I decided that I wanted to pursue piano really more seriously. So dance always kind of, I think, gave me a foundation in being a performer. And as Badie mentioned, it, I guess, subconsciously has sort of affected how I approach the piano, both physically and as an auditory experience. So I never pursued dance past, pre-college, but these projects that I've been doing with Badie have been a really great outlet to combine both of those art forms in a really personal way, because I'm like actually getting up off of the piano bench and moving around the room. So it's a pretty, I don't know, niche thing to do. So yeah, that's my background.
Cool. Is there any specific reason you chose piano over dance, or was it just like, oh, I remember having to make that choice when I was a kid. It's like, do I pick music or do I pick science, in college? And at some point you say, I can't imagine XYZ not doing this or something like that.
I think part of it was the reality that I would be able to play piano my whole life. And there were, I don't know, I think I just kind of thought, gosh, there are a lot of great dancers out there. And I think that I can just carry piano a little bit longer. Actually, I really didn't decide to major in piano until I started doing school auditions to just try and get piano scholarships. Like I thought about minoring in piano and majoring in something more practical, which didn't end up working out very well. And so, yeah, it was really just auditioning and having the person who became my professor say, why don't you think about majoring in this? So it was kind of the classic, someone saw potential and that kind of lit me up, and it kind of started from there.
Just keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So staying on the dance kind of topic. So Daniel, like you said, you work a lot with dance did you say you're like the composer kind of in residence at FSU with the dance? I know you're a professor, but.
Yeah, that's one way of thinking about it. I've made a lot of works for our faculty. I compose a lot of works for them, and sometimes for students as well. And I've worked both as a composer and as a sound designer. So in both capacities.
I gotcha. So is there any, did you kind of just fall into doing a lot of those things for them, or were like you hired because you had that experience, or, or was it something that just kind of blossomed at FSU?
Well, way back at the beginning of the universe when I was hired there, I was brought on, the very first iteration of my job there was actually as a staff recording engineer. And it was not a requirement that I compose, but it was something that I was very passionate about and I had experience doing and I wanted to. And so right off the bat, one of the professors, Tim Glenn, wonderful choreographer who had danced with the Owen company, he asked me to create some music for a project that he was working on. And that was the first time that I had created music for serious, like proscenium staged dance. That was probably 2009, I think it was. So from that point, my positions ended up shifting. I became a faculty member eventually. And then composition became a much bigger part of what I do. But in addition, I play for the dance technique classes. They're studio classes, so like ballet classes, contemporary technique classes, these kinds of things. I play many, 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 many of these. I think I added them up once, and I've played over 4,000 of these classes.
Oh my God!
So that's a big part of what I've been doing in my professional life is accompanying those kinds of classes. And in the contemporary classes especially, there's a lot of improvisation that's involved. From the musician's standpoint, they see the phrase that's being taught and they have to generate sound in the moment that is appropriate for that kind of phrase work. So in essence, it's a lot of short-term compositions that I'm making. You have, an hour and a half class or whatever, and you're constantly composing new ideas to work with different kinds of physical gestures. So a lot of the way my music composition career changed was inspired by that experience working with dance. Prior to getting involved in the dance world as a composer, a lot of my music was more cerebral than it is now. I'm not trying to make a value judgment one way or the other, but it was just different. It was more calculated, more, sit down and figure things out kind of experience. Versus today, where a lot of what I do, I think, is more driven by expression and phrasing and generating appropriate moods that are conducive to the kinds of music, kinds of movement that are occurring. So it's kind of a different psyche about composing than I used to when I was in an earlier part of my career.
I wanted to comment on, I think that's, you said that, you've done all these things, like for, classes and things doing. I always thought that was interesting. I encourage anyone to do that. I remember, so I was a composition student as well, but I was playing in the orchestra. So a lot of times, I would have the score out in the middle of the rehearsal and they would be like, just the winds. And I would just follow the wind part. And I would see why that was hard to do that. Or look at, here's the strings and the winds. And it was almost like deconstructing the piece in front of me. And I was like, this is amazing. I did that from then on out. Every time we played a piece, I would go find the score and bring it with me to the rehearsal. So it's kind of the thing, you see the inner workings of dance, maybe when like, oh, this is what they're doing here, or this is the techniques, or this is how they're following each other. I always think that's great to be involved in, the practice part of any discipline.
Yeah, I think that's like a huge part of seeing there's a few points I could make about that. One is seeing the kind of physical energy and toll and endurance that it takes to become a professional dancer. It's a different kind of work than I think most of us in the music world experience, where a lot of it is mental. I mean, there is a physical component, of course, to playing an instrument, but it's usually not the same kind of cardio that these folks are experiencing. Right? And so there is a certain kind of grit and rigor that comes with that, which can be very inspiring. It can be very motivating to sit in a class and you see 30 people just like giving it their all physically. It's a little bit of a different kind of environment than sitting in an ensemble of musicians, and they might be giving it as well, but you don't see the sweat pouring off of them and, and all of that. So it's a kind of motivation that I quite like.
Okay, so to Ben, so how, I know I heard someone say that you went to one of Caroline's performances. So how do you know the group again? I'm wondering how you tie in.
Yeah. So
yes, Ben. How do you know us?
How do we? So Dan and I are married.
Okay, gotcha.
We met a little over a decade ago, and have always been creating art together. So Dan made some of the first compositions that I set choreography to, and then it's just kind of evolved from there to have some live action like parties where we're role playing different characters, doing murder mystery parties, and making art just for the fun of it in our house. And so the immersive practice has kind of tumbled out of all of that, with Dan assisting musically and sonically with all sorts of different additions. And so when we saw Caroline performing Electric Sky Blue, I was really interested because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to work with live musicians and putting them in immersive environments. And Caroline is specifically suited to do that, since she kind of lives in both worlds. It's hard to find musicians that are wanting to explore that movement component. And so I immediately was interested. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, that makes sense now, how you know each other.
And can I just chime in while we're on this? Because I know that Ben and I for many years had talked about wanting to at least explore the use of technologies in our work. A lot of what we've done in the past has been more analog, where I know that Ben does a lot of... For example, he's used old Victorian styles of Pepper's Ghost illusions and these kinds of things in our, installed immersive experiences that he's been involved in. But we didn't have a lot of the expertise in the more cutting edge digital technologies, and so that's why we kind of also. Jumped on the back of Badie because of all of his expertise in that field.
So since we've talked about all this stuff, let's talk about the piece that you all are doing. So what's the title of it? I think I saw what it is, but somebody remind me, what is the name of the work you'll be doing for camp?
Sandbox Dreams.
Someone explain Sandbox Dreams for me, and without giving away too much, what's going to be happening when people see this work?
So this is a combination of installation and performance. So the way that we are thinking about it, the piece starts with the algorithmic installation, which is not interactive, and it's morphed to performance, and then it ends with a secondary version of the installation, which is interactive. So that's how like the piece is structured.
Well, it's sort of the idea for it came out of when Dan and I remember we were like sitting on the porch at our artist retreat, and we were talking about this idea of wanting to create something that sort of inspired audience members to kind of break past that wall that's always there between performer and audience and create this basically like explorative environment where people feel like they can be part of art making and making something beautiful, and it's this very like collective idea. And so I think that's sort of how we came to the title of Sandbox Dreams, because there was almost this like kid element to it where everyone gets to step into this world for a little while and just play with art making. And so is that how you would kind of describe it, Dan?
Yeah, I think that you pretty much nailed it. Yeah. I think a big part of what we were talking about is exactly that. This idea that sometimes as we get older, we become adults and we stop playing as much and we stop thinking of ourselves as much as creatives and artists. And so we wanted to provide an outlet for people to feel comfortable coming and playing in a judgment-free environment. And so a lot of what we've been trying to do is figure out how can we create ways for the audience members to interact with different technologies that we're putting into the space, and with other elements, in order to create both sound and visuals that's in a somewhat mature way, like where it's actually seems like real art because it is real art, right? Not like this, like, anyway, you probably know what I mean.
Not like a kids museum or something, like,
It's not like
it's
proof
like
of concept. Yeah, it's actually, this is more than just beep boop beep boop beep boop or something.
Right, and where there's enough variety and what they can generate, that it is a fulfilling experience for adults to play with. So that's a big part of I think what was motivating it. And I never really thought about this until we're having this conversation. But do you think the reason that we were thinking so much about Sandbox Dreams is because we were at a beach?
About to say Myrtle Beach, yeah.
Like, I really never put those two things together, but it seems obvious now.
Yeah, that probably was subconscious.
That makes sense. I could see that. I'd be thinking about sand. Yeah. And so, talk about somebody. We're saying it's an immersive, and I know that there's electronics and there's visuals. I'm a very technical person, so if you don't mind asking, what are the technologies that we're using? I'm going to guess Maximus P and something else. I forget the visual ones I know. So,
Badie, this is you.
So for I'm using basically Ableton and Max for Live uh, for uh, for sound and also for communication between Max and Touch Designer, where I design all of the visuals. So like both sounds and visuals are in constant conversation over like OSC, basically Open Sound Control Communication Protocol. Yeah, and like we're using we're not so sure, but like 3 to 4 projectors and we're going to have a surround sound, and we have a piano, and we are having stations that we are using motion capturing devices. I mean, in our case, we are using camera, basically webcams, and lip motion, and some small like Arduino kits that we're using for some controls. And yeah, and like we're translating like emotions or colors to sound or vice versa.
Gotcha. Then you said it's called, is it Touch Designer? Is that the name of the?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I've never heard of that program. Cool. That's a new one for me. I know Max for Live and Ableton. That's awesome that you're using Ableton. Most people just use Max, so I love that you're using Ableton in there.
Yeah, Ableton is a lot easier to see everything at the same time, because
It's a good organizer.
it's a good organizer, exactly.
So Ben, how are you playing into this? Are you helping just design the type of interactions that people are going to be doing, and then kind of the technical things are on Badie?
So, shorter answer, yes. So we all got together, was this 2-3 weekends ago, in Houston at Rice, and we were kind of exploring the ways in which there could be performer controls of the visual design, well, and the audio. And so we're kind of just hashing out all of the technology that we have access to, and the ways that it could be incorporated choreographically that would make sense. And create kind of a seamless story arc from beginning to end.
Gotcha. And so it starts as installation, as you said first. So yeah, I guess there's no interaction at that point, right? So is that just pre-recorded sound?
It's all algorithmic.
Oh, algorithmic. You said
sound
that,
and
yeah.
visuals. Yes. Which is like all of the musical materials of that algorithm came from a chord progression of the part of one of the things that Daniel wrote. And I made the algorithm based on that triggers specific pitches, chords with different lengths, and like also with different movements of the visuals. That's not like the audience cannot trigger anything, but the first time that Ben is going to well, maybe I shouldn't talk about everything.
Yeah, so we have a few secrets that we're trying to
keep. I know, that's what I was saying. I was like, I know maybe there's going to be that like, whoa, that's cool. You don't want to give it away, yeah, in case people listen. So that's okay. You can keep it a secret.
But I tell you what we could do. Maybe we could share some insight into this. Into the music that was written for Caroline to play. I could talk a little bit about that. So basically, what happened is I started exploring with characters. So, okay, let me back up. The idea was, if this is a place where people can have these artistic experiences, even if they're not, trained in the arts at all, it could be hopefully still a fulfilling experience for them to generate creatively. That there's a sense of like magic or dreamlike quality about the whole thing, and that's Sandbox Dreams. So there's kind of this whole almost like an Alice in Wonderland-esque sort of experience, I think, that we're going into this rabbit hole where things are suddenly possible that weren't possible before. That kind of vibe is what we were trying to generate. And so I was imagining, okay, what if someone's in this new universe? What are the characters that they would meet in this fanciful sandbox? And so I ended up creating a couple different themes that were trying to evoke the qualities of these imaginary characters that were in my mind. And again, it's very much like Alice in Wonderland, almost. Like there's one theme that we've been actually, when in rehearsing, we've been calling it the Mad Hatter theme, because it sounds a little bit, I think, like a character that could be kind of this quirky Mad Hatter type character, right? That you could meet along the way. There's also sort of a theme that's like a dreamlike quality, and it's kind of a transitional theme to get the audience into the experience. So out of the algorithmic stuff and into the more performative part of the work. So basically there were these several different themes that were compiled. I threw them at Caroline. I was like, hey, what do you think of this stuff? And then from that feedback, we decided which parts should actually be lengthened and expanded and how we should transition from one to the other. And we decided to also inject moments of gap in between so that there's going to be opportunity to explore some of the technology in the space in between musical movements, basically.
Yeah, so sort of this, like, not dichotomy, but shifting from purely acoustic into, I don't know, manipulated electronic stuff.
Gotcha. So, in talking about preparation for this piece, since I don't want to talk about it anymore about the materials because we'll give it away. So, so was everyone just at Rice doing this for the first time, or was it just Ben? And so, I guess what I'm getting at is, I know we were talking about the last people that I interviewed, just talking about doing things digitally, because it's always a topic, how COVID made us not be able to get together, and how do we do that? So, what's been your method for getting this together? Have you been meeting in person? Has it been a lot of things online? Have you recorded parts and sent it back and forth? I'm sure all of this is true, but I'm just interested on what the process has been of as collaborating of all four of you.
So it's been a little bit of everything. We started with just Zoom meetings because we were all in different places. And we were able to get fairly far into the process just with that. But then we realized very quickly, like, okay, we're actually going to have to get in the space and see like what we can do together. And so that's why that visit to Rice, it was Badie, Caroline, and myself in the space, and we Zoomed Dan into the room when he was needed. And so we were kind of just putting our brains together for a think tank, and just getting everything out on a whiteboard. As far as the structure. So that was really like the foundational meeting as far as the visual impetus and all of that was set in that one weekend. So it was very busy, very full. It was about like a day and a quarter of work, but we got a lot of stuff out there. And then we've just kind of gone our separate ways to kind of fiddle with everything.
Yeah, and also while we were there, we did, Ben, maybe you just said this, but we did do some recording. So Badie was kind of filming various dance and piano elements. Yeah, Badie has really great access to a theater at his school, and so I have flown to Houston. I guess between all of our other collaborations, I've flown to Houston now, like, what, 5 times or something, to work together. And it's pretty amazing how inspired this like very short chunk of time can be. It's like very intense. It's very like nonstop working, but when you can get people together in the same space, like Ben said, it's just things happen so quickly.
So did you have it? I know you said mostly doing it in Zoom. Did you have most of it planned out? So like Badie, you know exactly what to bring, or was it kind of like, here's all my toys, here's all the things I know how to use. Here, let's figure out which ones we want to use. Because I know sometimes if you're too focused, you're like, oh, I wish I would have brought that, but it's also probably a pain to pack up all your gear. So was it pretty precise at that point when you did the actual physical meeting, or was it more open?
I mean, by then we know our like a plot of the whole performance. So we exactly know like what are the formal structure of the piece, what are the like ideas in terms of movement, placement, sound, and then I had some materials ready for workshopping, but at that time we still didn't know like what exactly we're going to use. So during that workshop, we kind of changed a lot of our ideas. So we developed new ideas and we made stuff like at the moment. And yeah, but like, yeah, traveling with all of these gears it's a big hassle. Not only for me, because like Daniel is basically bringing everything including piano. So,
Yeah, I have to say that my university has been very supportive as well. They, there's as you can imagine, there's a lot of cables and projectors and stuff that we need to use, and some of the equipment they're allowing us to borrow. Some of it they're, giving me some grant money to purchase the things that we need. And it's a lot easier for me to drive it from Tallahassee down to the Tampa Bay area than it is for Badie to bring equipment on a plane from Texas.
Right.
Although Badie he has stories of transporting things. When we premiered Electric Sky Blue, our other piece, in Florida, of just trying to get through security with like a computer in a suitcase. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
I'll never talking about that. I played a piece where it was a suitcase that had all these electronics in it, and you played on the surface. And I took it to England. I don't know. Can you imagine an old suitcase full of like Arduinos and all these PAs? They probably thought I had a bomb on the plane. So yeah, I know the feeling. Good thing. Well, good thing. I guess you don't have to fly. I mean, well, you probably will, but you don't have to fly internationally. I guess so it's not it's a big deal. So.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Exactly. Be prepared for when you do have to. Yeah, it's a fun one. Cool. So have you seen the space yet? Like, have you gotten like pictures, a video tour, or is it just kind of conceptual what it is?
So Ben and I actually took a trip down there to tour the space, which was very helpful. And we zoomed in Caroline and Badie here and there so they could get some digital tour of the space as well.
Cool. Okay. So is it just like a black box? Is that the idea, or is it more?
It's more of a gallery.
A gallery, right?
So it's a very large open gallery space. And so it works well for us because basically it's blank canvas. So we can use any surface as projection. So we're excited to get in there and set it all up and see what we can make of it.
You two have been to, I guess, the Tampa Bay area now. Have the other two of you been to the Tampa Bay area? I'm going to guess no, yes?
I have for other things, but never for like long term. I've been to USF before for like piano things, but yeah, it's a great city.
And Badie, so first time, so we'll have to show you all the great.
That's my first time. Yes.
Restaurants.
Please, yes. I'm excited.
Go to Busch Gardens. Do all that stuff. Yep. Great. All right. Well, I'll leave it at that. And yeah, any of the questions I think will be answered on the night of the performance. So appreciate you all being here. And yeah, to all the listeners, come check out Sandbox Dreams. So all right. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.